Sure, abuti honestly.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good morning to colleagues. Good morning, everybody present on this platform. Chairperson, can I switch my camera off?
Yes, you may, Honorable Daniels.
Thank you. Chairperson, I want to welcome the presentation by the team of the AG's office. But I just want to briefly touch on a view that I have when it comes to allocations being given late, resulting in rollovers, and it's poor planning. And I really believe that we cannot just allow funds to be handed over late, which results in rollovers and delay in projects, because it's an injustice to the public who's in need of these programs or facilities or even job opportunities, because it's got a knock-on effect when those payments are being delayed. The community suffers at large, and we need to then come hard on whoever the culprits are responsible for these delays in order to ensure that we function optimally, because there's no ways. We know when budgets are being passed. We know about how much budget has been allocated, the division of the budgets. And whoever takes responsibility for that must be held to account, because it is totally irresponsible or incompetent of those in those positions to ensure that those funds are being paid over timelessly. The knock-on effect is too devastating. When I reflect on the item raised on the broadcasting project, which has gone pear-shaped to the tune of 7.5 million rand, I'm happy to know or note that it's been investigated. But we must also put pressure on those investigating officers, because you see what people tend to do. If you have given me the 7.5 million, I knew upfront already that I'm going to misappropriate that funds, because a crook will remain a crook like a leopard, doesn't change its spots. They get away for too long, and when they get this money, they don't care, because that money makes money for them in other avenues, whether it be legitimate, whether it be illegal, whether it be however form they apply that money, but they use that money because they are crooks. Anybody misappropriating the funds and it's not been used for intended purposes is a crook. So we must be very awake when we deal with those people. I suggest such companies must be blacklisted, and they must move with speed so that assets can be attached and removed that belongs to the organization or the company. Then the last item I want to just give my viewpoint on is the delays that I pick up here on this report on construction work. Even those contractors, you will find that they've got a track record or history of delaying previous projects, and they too must be blacklisted for not meeting the targets. The biggest challenge when it comes to those type of work is that we fail or we neglect to send in independent assessors to do quantification of the value of the work done in relation to the scope of work. Because one stadium that comes to mind, amongst many others across the country, but for the sake of time, I'm only going to mention one, is the stadium in Graaff-Reinet, the Collikuberg Stadium. There was something, if my memory serves me well, something to the tune of 45 million rand given for renovations. But to date, the project got halted. Despite so many millions paid, there's no value for money at all. And it's deeply disturbing that this happens. And it appears to the public there who's crying foul for what is happening, that nothing is being done. And I think the reason, to conclude, Chairperson, why there is the perception that nothing is being done, or the wheel grinds too slowly according to the liking of the people out there, is that barking without biting will not curb the scourge of state funding being misappropriated, abused, or looted. We need to start putting in our teeth and start biting so we can make examples of those people. And in the main, I think we must seriously look at blacklisting of those people who do not deliver on time and do not meet the targets, because they are clearly then incompetent and crooked. So thank you, Chairperson. Let me land there.
Yeah, Honorable. Proceed, Honorable Daniels.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Good morning to the Minister. I'm not sure if the Deputy Minister is here. If so, good morning, Deputy Minister, colleagues, and to Honorable Khabo. I want to thank you for allowing me. I'm not jumping the queue. The Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee called the order of who's going to speak, and my name was in there. But be that as it may, thank you so much for your courtesy. Colleagues, DSEC, I want to just check on 4 quick points. The one I want to dispose of is the repatriations that was raised. The repatriation is a very dignified and a noble thing that has been announced by the Department of DSEC that they're going to embark on. And it's the right thing to do. If it is that there's a few cracks here and there, I will encourage the Department of DSEC through the Minister, Honourable Mackenzie, to make sure that the cracks are filled, should there be any, so that we can start with the process of repatriations. It is critically important. And it just redresses so many imbalances of the past. And finally, it also works towards the healing and closing, or closure rather, to those affected families and anybody else involved. When it comes to, I know the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture, and we discussed it earlier on with the AG, they have a policy on transfer of funds to federations. But I want to know what measures are applied in terms of oversight by the department to ensure that the funds are used for its intended purposes, and also to make sure that there is value for money, because many times the public cries foul to say it's in the public domain that X amount of money has been allocated for a particular project, but without being qualified quantity surveyors or engineers, everybody can determine that there is no value for money. So the department needs to please answer what measures and systems they do have in place to ensure that for every R1 spent, we get 100 cents value for that. Funds being given to federations, there's also an issue around that in terms of funds being paid over much later. And when it's paid over much later, it has a direct effect on the intended purposes of those funds. And if it is for a project that is supposed to start and monies are being paid late, the knock-on effects is of such a dire nature that everybody down the value chain is being affected. And ultimately, we will find that sadly, jobs are affected. Those people who are dependent on projects to start because of the department being late in making those payments over to the respective federations or entities. Then I would like to touch on the budget. In particularly, I want to zoom into the school sports aspect. It was 687 million, it's now 712 million. And I'm really pleased that there's more money put aside for school sports. But the challenge that we have, and it's something that we really need to talk about, is when we look at the school sports, there are a few factors that I would want us all to apply our minds to. School sports, you get elected to represent your school or your province to partake against other schools. And then you find that watered down teams are being sent to partake in those tournaments. Watered down teams are being sent because in many cases, some of the better or best players cannot afford to partake in those tournaments because back at the ranch, back at home, poverty is rife, unemployment is high in the household. So the first thing the family will do is to keep the lights on and put bread on the table, as opposed to paying for the child that must travel to partake in a sporting tournament. Now, it's the lack of finances and the poverty that deprives our potential future champions from reaching full potential and accolades that is associated with achievements in sport. So the child lose out completely. Why? Because there's no money. What happens? The best child stays behind. Next thing, a province is underperforming because only those parents who can afford to pay to send the child, that's the team that goes and partake. And my parents who can't afford to put me in the squad as the best player, the whole team or the whole province, if it's a provincial tournament, loses out on making it onto the podium to receive a medal or a trophy. Now, if we are very honest with ourselves, how many athletes, sports personalities today who makes it onto the podium and gets the gold, silver or bronze, if you look at where they come from and look at where they are today, the big difference, and to me it hits home, is that those sports personalities today can offend and provide for their dependents, for their mothers, for their fathers, for their gogos, or for their guardians, whoever raised them, and went through everything to make them to get to the field, if it's a field sport. And today they can pay back and say, thank you for your efforts. Do you know how beautiful that is? To be in a position because you've been resourced, you've been afforded the opportunity to pay back to those who struggled to get you where you are today. So my question then is, what is this budget speaking about addressing these challenges? Because I'm specifically talking about schools, because that is our grassroots levels. And it is important to invest in grassroots levels so that we can have a better, stronger sporting nation going forward, so that we can realize the Project 350 as announced by the Honorable Minister. Thank you so much.